Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. Stepping his way onto the show today is a man who truly exemplifies what it means to be a leader in his life. He is the founder and CEO of The Strong Coach, is the host of The Bledsoe Show, and is a proponent for the responsible use of psychedelic medicines. Today, we take a ride down memory lane as we discuss his experiences, his viewpoints on terms such as quote-unquote ego death, and look forward to the future of these medicines together to project where we see them going in 2021 and beyond. Please help me in welcoming my man Mike Bledsoe to the show. Hey, man. Long time no see.
Yeah, man.
Dude, this has been a long time coming for starting this podcast, and I am so beyond stoked for it. A lot of people were like, man, 2 podcasts at once. Like, that's a little bit of a lot to bite off. And I was like, well, you know, most people that have met me know I enjoy talking just a little bit, you know, so
just a little bit.
Yeah. Soft talking knowledge, you know? So, yeah, man, I'm super stoked to have you on the show to chat about everything. And I thought a really good spot to start with would be having you share a bit about how you were first introduced to the world of psychedelics, because as we heard on Highly Optimized, you weren't always into psychedelics. So I'd like to hear that journey.
Yeah, so I was actually very opposed to them. I remember growing up and my parents, they had done LSD, and my dad was saying, you know, I don't recommend it. You may open some doors you can't close and all this stuff. And I was like, all right. So I just didn't do it. I was thoroughly scared the way he described it. And so, and I went in the military, and obviously that's not a part of the culture there. And I get into fitness and entrepreneurship and health. And what's funny is fitness is the first step of personal development for a lot of people. They go, I need to change this physical body. And so they take on, a lot of times people go, why do so many people in health and fitness end up in the psychedelic realm? I go, well, they realize that what's holding them back is not, are they eating enough, you know, protein, carbs, and fat, and this and that, and doing enough, you know, intense workouts. It's like, oh, there's other things going on psycho-emotionally, spiritually. And what was happening for me was I was butting up against success. I wanted to be successful. And I remember listening to a Joe Rogan podcast where Tim Ferriss was talking about eating mushrooms every 6 months to hit the reset button. I go, all right, well, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought. I did some research and I go, oh, well, the psilocybin stuff heals the brain. It doesn't cook your brain like they told us back in the 80s, you know? And I was like, all right, that's not right. And then I went to a conference where there was psychedelic art, and it was a marketing conference, and there was all this alluding to psychedelics throughout the week. And I go, all right, another really successful guy. All right. And so for me, if someone is achieving what I want to achieve in life, I go, well, what is it that they're doing that I'm not doing? And psychedelics was one of them. So I left that conference in 2013, and I procured some mushrooms and went to the park with 2.5 grams of powerful mushrooms, golden teachers. And I lay in the park and I watched the entire sky go fractal with geometric patterns. And I felt like I was inside of this like giant soccer ball, you know, the way it's weaved together.
Yeah.
And I like, oh, wow. And there was this moment where the world, I'm looking at the sky, I'm in the park, and it falls. And I realized that I'm not actually experiencing the world. My senses are informing me, and I'm creating the world that I live in internally. And I had the experience of that happening because it fell inside of me. And I go, oh, shit. I have created this whole world. I am responsible for how I perceive the world. Oh, my God. Okay. Very interesting. And I remember just tears running down my face as I lay in the park. And just, I can't even put into words that type of realization, that experience. Because it's one thing to intellectualize that. Someone can hear me say that on the show right now and go, oh, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it, then you don't know.
Yeah.
And so, and everyone's experience is different too. So it was a very profound moment that I had there. And then followed by that there was a lot of dogs at this park. And I did it early in the afternoon. And then, on the back end of the journey, people were getting off work and bringing their dogs to the dog park. And I noticed that people were walking around and they were on their phones or they were talking to someone else. And I, by the way, the week before at this conference, we did this exercise on empathy. And I really pride myself on being a very good student, straight A kind of guy. Like I ruined the curve in college for other students. People hated me because I'm very good at taking in information and making sense of it. And so I do this empathy exercise at this conference, and I am failing miserably. I have this worksheet. I'm pairing up with another person, and I'm getting nothing. Like I do not understand this at all. And it devastates me. I have the experience of failure. I go to lunch. I go back to my hotel room, and I spent $7,000 to be at a 7-day conference. And on day 3, I didn't go back that afternoon. I was emotionally destroyed. I was so tired. I was like distraught. So I go to a movie. I just go watch a movie. And the next morning, I didn't go back to the conference. It took me till noon the next day to talk myself into going back in. And then I forgot about it. I was like, you know what? That's just one thing I'm not good at. That's okay. I'm going to focus my energy on the rest of this conference. And had I not gotten the empathy piece, I would have probably been, I would have learned some stuff at the conference that would have allowed me to make more money. Mm-hmm. But empathy is really necessary to be a good marketer. And I knew that. And that's what I was told at the conference from somebody I trust. And on the back end of this journey, usually like I get one big thing out of a journey. I got 2. I saw people in the park. They were talking on their phones. They were talking to other people. All of a sudden, I was able to imagine what it was like to be one of these dogs. I'm like, these dogs have been in a kennel. They've been at home by themselves. These people are getting off work. And they're not giving their dogs the attention they deserve. Mm. And I'm like, these dogs are going nuts. And the people aren't even paying attention to them. These poor dogs that started having this deep empathy for the dogs. Yeah. And I go, oh my God. I'm getting angry at the people. I'm like, you motherfuckers, like, you pay attention to your dog. Yeah. And then it hits me. I go, I do the same thing to my dog. I come to this park. And I talk to other people and I throw the stick, but I'm on my phone. I was like, oh man, I felt really bad. I go, oh, I'm one of these people. And then I go, oh, I do the same thing to my wife. Oh, I do the same thing to my mom. I do the same thing to my clients. And I go, oh shit, I have not been listening to anybody. I do not have the skill of giving someone my undivided attention. Mm. And there was a bit of grieving that came with that and a commitment to myself that from now on, things will be different. I go home and I sit down and I listen to my wife, my ex-wife now. Mm-hmm. She's great. Mm-hmm. You've met her.
Yeah.
And I listen to her. I ask her how her day was, and I just ask her questions, and I don't fucking tell her anything for minutes, which is rare. And she starts crying. And I'm going, what's wrong? Because at that point in my development, I didn't know how to be with emotions either. I avoided them. And she goes, I don't know. And what we can both look back on that moment now was that was the first time that I'd actually listened to her. And that may have been the first time that she had felt heard and understood by anybody, because we were living in a world of people who were just waiting for their turn to talk.
Yeah.
And I remember going to bed that night and going, wow, I hope this doesn't go away. I hope this feeling doesn't go away. I hope this experience doesn't go away. And I was so scared that I was going to wake up the next day and lose it. And I didn't. The next day I stayed curious. I'm a curious individual anyway, but I was curious about things, not people. And I became curious about people. And I remember going to my gym the next day and getting curious about the people in my gym and the clients. I remember I used to throw a lot of parties, and I had people at my house. And at that time, when I had that psychedelic experience, all of a sudden the desire around alcohol had completely vanished. And I used to throw parties and have a cake there and cases of beer and vodka, and I'd throw a pool party and it'd be a all day rager. And I remember throwing parties after that and getting the beer and everything, and then standing around talking to people, getting curious about them instead of talking about the weather. And they didn't know what to do with it. It actually made them uncomfortable. And so, and that was okay. That was okay. And I ended up finding a group of people after that where they wanted to share what was going on with them. They wanted to let me into their world. And I found that to be a much more satisfying relationship to be in, where we could have real conversations.
Yeah.
So, that was my introduction. And it required me to hear it from people who I trusted and looked up to say it's okay. Not only is it okay, but it's beneficial. And I was really fortunate that I didn't experience them the first time in a party environment. There was intention. I had a whole week of intention set before that, unbeknownst to me. I didn't know that. But because I had gone through this training, and my intention of the journey was I remember bringing a pen and paper to the park. So because I go, okay, so when you take psychedelics, it's supposed to help you learn faster. So I'm going to take all this. I'm going to bring my business notebook from last week, and I'm gonna like
power through it.
I'm gonna like grok all this information.
Yeah.
Didn't fucking crack the book. Didn't crack it. Like afterwards, I was laughing at myself. I go, oh, I thought I knew what this was.
Yep.
But I had no idea.
Yeah.
So that was how I was introduced.
Man, that's really cool. And on that last part right there, I have a couple things I wrote down, but on that last part, it's funny, like it does speed up your learning about being, right? Not doing. So it's like a catch-22, because I've had very similar experiences where, especially with like LSD, where I'm like, oh, this is like a nootropic, Silicon Valley, etc. So I'm going to do this. And then I end up staring at bark for 3 hours, and I learn so much more about things that are actually like pertinent to my life than if I was just going into a book and trying to learn things. And, one of the things that you chatted about a little while ago was you can hear me say this and think that you understand it, but if you haven't had the experience, you don't know it. And I always surmise that as like the difference between knowing it and feeling it, right? It's a difference, because intellect, yes, you can learn and explain what things mean. I mean, Lane Staley said it perfect in an Alice in Chains song, which is, you'll never understand the user's mind, but try with your books and degrees, And it's so true, because it's rampant in the world of medicine, substances, etc. And, with alcohol, I found that exact same thing. The first time I did MDMA at a rave scenario, EDC Las Vegas, after that, I literally have never gotten drunk since. Like, I just didn't have any want. I didn't like alcohol before that anyway. I just kind of convinced myself. I'd look around and be like, well, other people seem to be enjoying it, so maybe I'm enjoying it. Which, if you have to ask yourself that, you're not enjoying it. And, to me, it's the difference between numbing yourself or expanding yourself. And that's not to say that, one is necessarily better than the other. For those listening, like, if you enjoy alcohol, that's awesome, But for me, psychedelics did a lot for me in the ways of expanding. And that does not mean that expansion was easy. Actually, quite the contrary. And most times it was extremely uncomfortable, especially the first, I'd say 10 or 15 times that I experienced a psychedelic high. Extremely jarring, because it's really like, okay, it's like going from Windows 98 to XP, it's like, how am I going to run all this? This changes everything. And, one thing that I really want to touch on, because I feel it's of utmost importance, is the subject of intention setting, right? And we hear about this a lot, and it's like one of those catch-all phrases now in the psychedelic revolution that's happening. And I'd love if you could bring us through like how you do your intention setting, because I imagine for someone listening who maybe hasn't done it, they've heard about it, but maybe they haven't got the right instructions on how to do it. Or if they have, maybe they'd like to expand on it. So I'd love to hear how you go about doing that.
Yeah, my intention setting process has evolved over time. And, it really, the way I do it now is a lot of journaling beforehand. So one of the things that I've noticed with intention setting, a lot of times people are like, oh, what do I want more of in life? Oh, I want more clarity, or I want more love, which is great. It's a great intention to have. And the medicine will definitely take you there in ways that you don't expect. And what I like to do is see how much I can uncover with my conscious mind, and how much, being in the practice after doing a lot of medicine, a lot of meditation, a lot of journaling, and having the practice of reflection, is how much can I reflect on consciously? How much can I pull out of my unconscious in a sober state, journal it out, work it out, use my language tools to translate and get as deep as I possibly can, then sit with the medicine. And what that allows me to do is to go way deeper into the conversation in which I set my intention for. So I like to get it down to one word if I can, but that one word, there was 1,000 or 2,000 words that I wrote down in preparation for that one word. And that one word simply becomes the anchor, the anchor. So if you get lost in the journey, you can come back to it. And the mistake that a lot of people make is they set the intention, and then, I don't think most people do it consciously, but they think they know how the medicine's going to work. Like, oh, I want to experience acceptance around this thing. And the thing is if you knew how the medicine was going to work, you wouldn't need the medicine.
What
So it always comes in through some back door, and there might be part of the journey where you go, what does this have to do with my intention? And then it brings up all this stuff, and I go, oh, that's how. Mm-hmm. I thought I was focused on this thing that happened last week or last month or last year. Oh, it took me back to my childhood when I was 4, and shows me how that experience when I was 4 years old has informed how I see the world from here, moving forward. And then that thing that I was focused on, actually, I can see it from multiple perspectives simultaneously. And I have much more accurate reporting of that experience, and a lot more acceptance, for instance. Mm-hmm. And so, that's my intention setting process. There's a lot of preparation. Right now, I'm preparing for an ayahuasca experience that'll happen at the end of June. I'm going down with a group of 19 other veterans, military veterans. And tonight we're doing our third call. We're doing a call once a month in preparation for it. Tonight I'm leading an exercise and getting people present to their own emotions and also the experience of other people. It's an empathy exercise. Surprise. We're spending months in preparation for this. And for a lot of these guys, it's their first time experiencing it. And so we're putting, they think they know what they're going in for. And what I've informed them of is if we can the more prep we do, the more you're going to get out of it. And the less likely you're going to experience something that is, it'll be a challenging experience for most people, but you'll be able to make sense of it better on the back end, the more preparation you go in with it. So, and the more preparation, good preparation that goes into it, the more comfortable they are going to be getting on that plane, going to the retreat center, and drinking the medicine. Because my first time with ayahuasca, I had prep, and it was still terrifying. I was like, oh, this is supposed to be the most powerful psychedelic on the planet. I'm in the jungle, and I don't know these people, And so how can we reduce the amount of stress going in, and that'll also allow you to go deeper. So yeah, the prep, the integration, or the prep and the intention setting, extremely powerful tools in combination with medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that too. And especially with regards to what you were saying around the challenging experiences, because this is like one of the funniest things that I think back to when I first began using psychedelics, and like some of the advice, quote unquote, that I got from people, like, oh, you don't want to do this or that or this or that because you'll have a bad trip, right? And really, like, I say this a little jokingly, but with a side of truth in it. Like, I almost wish for challenging experiences. I almost wish for the quote unquote bad ones, because in a way, those are the ones for me that really blow the doors open. Now, that being said, I don't, go into things recklessly. I mean, we've all had our festival scenarios where, whoops, we took too much acid or something, but I don't invite those in. But at the same time, I love what you brought up there about like having that intention set, having more awareness of what you could expect, which is why I started this show, right? Which is to allow people to understand the full range of what they could expect. That way, if things do get challenging, they are more able to say, okay, you know what? This is part of it. I'm going to surrender. I'm going to give into this. Let's look right into it. Let's jump right into what I'm fearful of. And that's something I've heard people like Aubrey Marcus talk about before, where when he was on ayahuasca, I believe it was his first time, he was pretty much remote viewing in a way, and he was watching his body get eaten alive by snakes and just ripped apart, and all this really grotesque stuff happened. And normally it would have scared the living shit out of him, but he had done enough research and enough just research in general about what could possibly happen. And he had talked enough with people to realize, like, okay, this is in the very far realm of possibility. So instead of reacting, I'm going to respond to this situation and jump into it further, and I think that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on is, in my experience with talking with numerous individuals on the subject of psychedelics, it is clear that not everyone would benefit from this type of experience. Why do you feel certain people benefit so highly from these medicines while others do not? Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
I think that the people who benefit from it most are the ones that are willing to be wrong. The people who, at least in to the best of their ability, are looking for the answers anyway. They're the people who are introspective and curious and things like that, and also physically healthy. Their biochemistry is quote unquote normal, and we'll call it healthy, not normal. Mm-hmm. And so those people tend to have, and also the ability to surrender, and the ability, sooner you can figure out how to surrender. And a lot of times medicine taught me what surrender was.
Same.
So those people tend to do well. The people who have a hard time, usually they are in the habit of numbing, as you had said before. Mm-hmm. They tend to avoid, they tend to sweep things under the rug. Those people are going to have a more challenging experience. And then also if someone's biochemistry is off, if they're unhealthy, it could be, that could create a much more challenging experience. If somebody lacks courage, if there's somebody who, I see a lot of people who they do like medicine, but they lack the courage to integrate the lesson into their life. A lot of times they'll experience suffering on the back end of a medicine experience, because in the medicine experience, they wrongly assume that the problem was solved during the ceremony instead of just having been enlightened to what needed to be solved and taking the action to correct their life. And I've been around, I don't even know how many journeys I've done at this point. I've done 15 ayahuasca. I've done, about 15 5-MeO DMT experiences, countless LSD, countless mushroom experiences, probably a good 30 MDMA experiences, spaced out appropriately, by the way. That's over years and years and years. I've seen some people just not know how to, their interpretation of what's happening is inside of a box. They're trying to make it fit into a preconceived notion. I watched one person go schizo on ayahuasca down in the jungle, and took us 2 days to get her back to normal. It's not for everybody. It's, when I first did ayahuasca, I was like, everybody should do this. And then, now I go, well, not everyone can do this because there's not enough medicine for 7 to 8 billion people. And then the other side is some people are just a little too puckered for the experience. Like they're a little, they're like always on the edge. And so for a lot of those people who are really buttoned down and maybe a little puckered, like maybe start with microdosing, and maybe that'll loosen you up so that you could be prepared for a bigger experience. I had actually gone through some really challenging training in the Navy, which required an incredible amount of courage. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever done. And there were moments where the best place to come into a ceremony is if you're willing to die. Because you could have the experience in a medicine experience of experiencing what you think is a true death. And if you are not in a place in your life where you could die without regret, you could end up fighting the death. And fighting that death, by the way, death always wins. And
accurate.
Yeah, you're gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
And so if you're someone who's afraid of death, and there's varying degrees of that, then when death does come to your doorstep in that psychedelic experience and you fight it, that's going to cause a very challenging place. So I believe there's a lot of work that can be done prior to an experience around, have you even reflected on your own death? Is that something you're present to? I saw a really good Instagram video the other day where the guy, I don't know who made the video. My buddy posted it, but it was what happens when you don't look at porn. If you're somebody who doesn't look at porn, what do you think about all day if you're not thinking about porn? And it was finding a partner, getting married, having kids, having grandkids, being on your deathbed, your funeral,
everything else. Yeah.
Everything else, like life. You're going to think about what is happening. What is happening to me right now? What's this expansion of consciousness and time? What does it actually result in? Well, it results in your body degrading and going into the grave at some point. And if you're somebody who's been avoiding that conversation with yourself, you may be confronted with that and experience. And that can be, again, if you've done no reflection on that and you hop into a ceremony, that may not be a good idea, because that's not something that has to be done in a ceremony. You can do that on your own. And then you can go into ceremony and go deeper into that. But if you have zero acceptance of it, where most people do not, then it could be a lot.
Yeah, agreed. And, the funny paradox with that is that when we actually look at death, we actually find out what it really means to be alive, right? Because it's the funny paradox of it. And I definitely agree with that because I've had a couple different experiences where I have gone through a legitimate death process, what has felt as though it is that. And the first time it happened, I went into it with the intention set. I was doing a mushroom tea, quite a big tea with a friend. And we had everything laid out, set and setting was good. We were just going to meditate and really pretty much do the Terrence McKenna thing, 5 grams in darkness in his silly voice. And so, we do the tea and we had done some penis envies, and I was unaware of the different levels of psilocybin and different strains. And everyone's got a PE experience, like everyone's got a penis envy experience if you talk to most mushroom people. And usually it's like, and then I figured out what was really going on. And so it was funny because I had this experience, and I remember I started laughing a lot, as happens with a lot of different experiences. And I started laughing so hard that when I tried to laugh, it like triggered this choking feeling in me. And then within it was faster than time. Like I couldn't even explain it in the realm of time. But basically what happened was within a nanosecond, I knew for a fact, 100%, that I ate the wrong mold, that my throat was closing up due to mold poisoning, and I was dying, like straight up. And so I kind of, I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. I go into the bathroom. I'm like pacing, try to make myself puke. Nothing's coming up. I'm like, I'm fucked, right? And then I realize, I literally realize, I look at myself in the mirror and I catch myself like pacing and doing stuff that you would not be able to do if your throat was actually closing up, right? And then I had this wait a minute. I would have already been dead if my throat was closing up. And then the cosmic giggle that overcame me with whether you want to call it the spirit of the mushrooms, whatever, that were just like, we had to check you real quick, now go lay down and have some fun stuff happen, And so then I laid down and proceeded to have the most incredibly transformative experience of my life, astral projecting, just literally traveling for about 4 hours. And I remember that trip was the best experience of my life. And that's what I was speaking to earlier when I said, yes, the challenging experiences are definitely challenging. They can really ruffle your feathers. And also, on the other side of that, in my experience, is the pure freedom you've been seeking, right? Or I've been seeking. And one of the things that I've noticed as well is the more aware you are of the ego and of these things, right, the better you can go into an experience in, because then if you are quote unquote dying, you have much more awareness of like, okay, maybe it's just my identity right now that's being relinquished, and maybe I'm more than this, and okay, I'll surrender, right? Versus like the people you were talking about that are puckered, they have no, their identity is Mike or Ryan. That's it. That's all they are. And so if that starts to fade away, panic ensues, and as I've seen, and I imagine you've seen as well, when panic ensues, good things are usually not to follow. That's when stuff gets pretty swirly pretty quick. And
I usually I have this little thing that I do when people start, what are we going to do about this situation? I mean, I've been in the jungle and people say like that. And I go, or in business, doesn't matter. I go, whatever we do, I think the best thing we could do right now is panic. And then people are always like, yeah, that's ridiculous, and start laughing. I'm like, cool. Yeah. Let's put the panic behind us. Now let's solve the problem. Yeah.
I love that, man, because really, when people ask that question, when I've asked that question before, there is that little degree of like, is shit about to go crazy? And so if you just call it out right there, you're like, yeah, I think what we should do is panic, guys. Like, obviously, no, right? Like that actually can kind of lighten the load that everyone's feeling, because then they're aware, okay, we're now back in control, quote unquote, of the situation. And maybe it's better to just relax and down regulate ourselves, And, one of the things, that I'd love to chat with you about is a concept I heard from a doctor friend of mine that I loved, and I really use a lot now because it helped me see a lot about the use that people are using psychedelics for. And so I break it down into either a PEAK peak experience or a PEEK peak experience. And what I mean by that, right, is like how I see it now, having done countless journeys and learned from a lot of people that are shamans and people like that, is that what plant medicines do or can do is show you a peak, a PEAK, right? A big experience behind the veil. Okay, now you're bringing down your parameters of your consciousness. Let's see what else is out there, right? But if you do not integrate that experience on the tail end of it, right, then it just becomes an experience that, really is basically like a waking dream, right? But then if you, on the other side, decide to integrate that and do, a multitude of different practices, which we'll get into to help integrate, you can then start having PEEK experiences, right? So a perfect representation is, you have a big mushroom experience, you realize how far out you can go meditating, and then you start meditating, having that context, and you start getting different results with it, right? So you're getting PEEKs behind the veil in your otherwise normal conscious reality. I'm curious, what your thoughts are on this and whether or not you think the current psychedelic revolution is leaning heavier into the PEAK, like, oh, let's just do them all the time, or if people are integrating in your experience, especially with bigger medicines like ayahuasca and stuff. Is there a lot of talk about integration? Do you think there's more than there was in the 60s, et cetera?
Yeah, there's way more conversation around integration now. I've seen that over time. I think a lot of people think they're integrating when they're not. So there's that problem. There's always that problem with everything, is when people think they're already doing the thing that they're not doing, and they stop listening.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. But if you look at any culture where psychedelics are common, you have elders, right? And so what we had in the 60s is we had psychedelics come on the scene, and there were no elders. Right?
There were elders, no wise elders, though.
Yeah. And so what do you end up with? Yeah, that's right. Wrong elders. So what you end up with is a bunch of kids doing psychedelics and having realizations, but they don't know quite what to do with it, right? And so what we have now, being 2021, is we have elders. We have people that were in the 60s and 70s that go, all right, this is what I did, kids. We can go pick up that book that, different people have written.
Ram Dass or someone like that.
Yeah, all these books are flipping my mind right now. But Aldous Huxley and, some of these really great men and women who were able to pass that down through written word or on podcasts or whatever. And so I do think that we're at a big crossroads. So the opportunity for integration is at all-time high, but there's also just a lot of people doing psychedelics. They're either just using them in party environments, or they are going to ceremonies, but they lack the structure, right? They have an unstructured life. And psychedelics can be very useful for destroying structure so that you can create a new structure. And sometimes you need to spend some time without structure and being in the flow. But at some point, you have to start creating new structure. And that structure is integration. What did you learn? What's going to change? What structures, what boundaries, what values are now instilled that are going to inform you on how you live your life moment to moment? And that requires courage. Coming back to the courage conversation, it requires courage, because when you're not in that psychedelic state, everything in the psychedelic state seems so easy. It's your body's flooded with serotonin or serotonin-like chemicals that make everything seem okay. And that's one reason it's easy to go deep, is because you're in acceptance of things that you are not normally in acceptance of. And then on the back end is, can you carry that acceptance into your life and make the changes necessary to from the lesson you learn? I like to journal every day. I meditate every morning. These things help bring me back to that level of acceptance so I can make better decisions that day, to get my thoughts out on paper and look at them from different perspectives, get it out of the mind. I have movement practices to take care of myself, to let the energy flow through my body. I've had deep lessons in how to channel energy while on medicine. And I now channel that energy in a way that's helpful in business. I can channel energy through my body, into my mind, into my third eye, in a way that brings an incredible focus and power, and really allows me to use my mind as a tool that's being fueled by, we'll say, the chakras, right? Instead of it just being my mind floating around on its own doing some crazy bullshit. So there's, eating well, like all the things, eating well, eating enough DHA, you're rewiring your nervous system, you're rewiring your brain. It's made out of omega-3 DHA fatty acids. Eat enough of that. If you want the change to stick, you need the physical structures in the body to do that. So these are some of the practices that I have. I also, go and have my conversations. Oh, I realized I was wrong about something. All right, who was I wrong with? I got to go tell them.
Yeah.
I've had to go on podcasts and tell people I was wrong. All right, you tens of thousands of people all at the same time. Guess what? I realized I was wrong. So I know I said that, but now I'm saying this.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up the being wrong thing because, the paradox in that, because I've had this same thing happen, is two things. Number one, there's it stings for about 10 minutes. And then on the other side of that, there's so much freedom. And the other thing is that when, at least in my experience, when I've heard someone that I respect say, hey, I was wrong about this, like when Czech will come out and say hey, I'm wrong about XYZ thing, or I was back in the day, it makes me respect them so much more. It's almost like I'm a ride or die now for that person, because now I know that really the only thing that I get concerned about ever when I'm listening to so-and-so or whatever and hearing someone new is what I'm going to figure out 3 or 4 years down the line with regards to if they're wrong about something, they're not willing to admit it. So that allows me to see that they're human and they're doing the quote unquote work, which is another one of those catch-all phrases. But, I really enjoy that a lot. And so I think that's funny you brought that up. Yeah.
Someone who's never wrong, I don't trust them.
Yeah.
They're not honest.
Agreed.
I value honesty.
Yeah.
And if you've never been wrong, you're being dishonest.
Definitely.
So don't believe liars.
Yeah.
It's a bad way to go.
Yeah. And, usually the things that people argue when they're trying to be right all the time about being wrong are so small and trivial that what I always think is well, if they're this upset or concerned about being wrong over this thing, which in this case, let's say they clearly are, and there's no, evidence to support that they're not, then what else are they lying about that's so much bigger, Yeah. And that brings up a big conversation. And then this brings up another great conversation about who you choose to do psychedelics with, right? If you have one of those people in your circle, move away slowly, walk away slowly and don't choose to do psychedelics with them, because those are the people that, in my experience, have some very challenging experiences.
Yeah, I've had a few experiences where people came and projected the lesson they were supposed to be getting to me.
Yes.
The medicine gave me this message. You're being this way, and this way. And in that state, you can be very receptive. And I go, I'm thinking about a specific situation where this woman, we were in an ayahuasca ceremony, and right afterwards she was like, yeah, the medicine came in and told me that, you're being this way. And I just couldn't let it go. And I needed to tell you and this and this and this. And I'm going, wow, am I really that way?
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, I even apologized. I was like, damn, I'm sorry. And then later that day, I brought it up to a couple other people that were in a ceremony with us. I was like, am I being this way? I really want to check in, because this is a huge, I just don't know. There's a huge blind spot, and I need to know in what instances this is true, so I know what to change. And they fucking start laughing. And they're like, yeah, maybe a little bit, but the woman who was telling you all that, she's definitely that way.
Yeah.
That's she just described herself to you as a T, as you. I'll go, got it. Okay. She just projection vomited all over me.
Yeah.
And she went home and didn't learn the lesson that was meant for her and tried to get it for me.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things too. It was she was like, yeah, and if you don't fix this, then it's going to limit your success. You're capping out and all this stuff. I'm like, and then now after the whole thing, I'm going, oh, this is all for her.
Yeah.
But I've even tried to broach the subject a little bit, and it's just fucking hard stop. I'm like, all right then.
Yeah.
So yeah, And that was not an enjoyable experience. I had a beautiful experience that day, and then I followed by hours afterwards, like really like going, wow, am I fucking this thing up? And then realized to laugh it off. And really, it did take me out of my experience a bit of what I was really there to learn for me. So I'm a big fan of, getting consent to share. I mean, she did get consent to share, but like she just like I didn't have the awareness that she had a propensity for that. And I wasn't practicing good boundaries. But you just got to be, you learn lessons, right? And I go, well, I just don't do psychedelics with that person anymore.
Absolutely.
Until they demonstrate in some way that they've got a handle on that.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know what that would take, but whatever.
Yeah. And, it brings into the reference a very similar situation I've gone through before, and empathizing in a way, because you're like, I want to help this person, right? And at the same time, we have to, in that situation, put ourselves first. When our consciousness is expanded in that way and we're in those vulnerable positions, it's extremely easy to take on other people's stuff, especially when, you're really there to, gain awareness, right? And gain these things. And someone comes to you with something like that, and you're like, well, shit, is this something I'm missing? Oh my goodness, and that can be a real challenging situation and really just a mind fuck, and that is the side effect of what happens when, people get together and they're expanding their consciousness and looking to expand their awareness, especially in situations where you're in like a group scenario, like as I imagine ayahuasca ceremonies are, because I haven't done one yet, but I've done other ceremonies such as peyote and stuff with big groups, but really those have been more close friends. But even there, I definitely had some interesting experiences happen, with regards to other people projecting. And it's just very interesting stuff, and this brings up a good conversation on like how to prepare for these events. We call them dietes or dietas, especially with ayahuasca. And I know that most different places will differ a little bit with what to abstain from, etc. But I'd love to talk about your experience with, maybe sometimes not doing that versus doing it, and what you take out of your life before going into, say, something like ayahuasca, right? Yeah. To allow you to have the best experience possible, and what you see the whole point of a dieta being.
Yeah. I've been doing ayahuasca since 2015, and the dietas have varied depending on who I go see. The first dieta I ever did was very strict, and then the dieta that I was requested to do for the last 8 ceremonies I did was super loose. And truth be told, I didn't really notice that much of a difference between dietas. I did. This is what is important to me about dietas, all right? Mm-hmm. Remember what I said. It is important to me.
Yeah.
First off, I'm very sensitive. I drink like a quarter cup of coffee and I'm blasting off. I get one hit of tobacco, boom. One hit of weed, boom. Like there's not a medicine on this planet that I've had that I didn't need half the dose for, right? So there's also that. What I found dietas to be really, you want the body to be clean. So if your body's not clean, if you're not healthy, if there's some type of physical thing going on, which is tied into your psycho-emotional, like it's all tied together. If you go in dirty, the ayahuasca is going to want to clean. It has to clean that dirt out before you can get the messages you're supposed to receive. And that cleansing process can be excruciating.
Yeah.
So I've done that. I've gone in a little dirty. I'm generally pretty clean. Like my everyday life is pretty clean. Like it's not, there's not donuts a lot to clean out.
Yeah. Donuts and blunts.
Right. I don't eat, McDonald's and, I know people who go on dieta and it's a major shift for them. For me, I'm like, I got to cut out like 2-3 different foods and no big deal. And, that's probably why I don't notice that much of a difference because my according to me, not doing that heavy of a dieta is like, I just didn't really cut coffee out beforehand, right? Which is a good idea to do. But so I say that, and that what I find the most value in doing dieta is going in clean so you can go deeper, and then also raising your sensitivity. Like, you want to reduce salt, you want to reduce sugar, you want to cut all these things out. not because salt's bad for you, but because you want to increase your sensitivity. So if you're pounding yourself with salt, you're pounding your palate with sugar. You also don't want to do a lot of intense exercise leading it, because you could desensitize yourself to pain. You can desensitize yourself to all sorts of sensation and feelings and emotions and all these things. So for me, the point of dieta is make sure that the vessel is clean so the medicine can do its job. And also, let's see how sensitive I can get so that I get all the messages. And I don't want to hit myself with a lot of stimulation. We want to reduce the stimulation going into ceremony. So those are the 2 points of dieta. I've done a lot of research around, are these foods going to interact with the medicine poorly and this and that? And I believe to be some misinformation out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't eat this meat. I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
My joke is because I'm a white guy,
mm-hmm.
is that if you go down to a retreat center, an ayahuasca retreat center, and there's a bunch of white people running it, expect a really strict vegan dieta.
Yep.
If you go down in the jungle and you just meet up with some fucking shaman, they're just like, did you have pork yesterday? You're like, yeah. They're like, that'll be okay. It's like it's one of those things where I'm like, and that's just what I've noticed.
Yeah.
Because I've sat with all of them. I've gone to the bougie ayahuasca retreat center, and I've gone to the you better have brought a backpack and not a suitcase.
Yeah. We're going to be walking a while.
Yeah. So, and I've just noticed that. And now there's also the jungle dieta, where you're going to go for a month, 3 months, 6 months, and you're going to sleep under mosquito nets, and you're drinking the medicine and eating just enough food to survive. That's a different story. You are abstaining from meat. Trust me, there's a time and place for all that. But if you're somebody, this has been my experience. I'm going to keep saying that because someone's going to come out and be like, Mike's an asshole. But my experience has been if you're an American and you're going to go have this experience, clean up your diet,
mm-hmm. cut
out the pork, cut out the sugar. The sugar is way more important than the pork.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
And work on activities for sensitivity, lower the stimulation. Don't watch TV. That's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to eat bacon or watch TV, cut out the TV.
Yeah.
So there's just all that's pretty much all I got to say about dieta, I think.
Yeah. No, I love that. And really, the analogy that came to me was leaving the canvas empty, right? Leaving it blank, right? You want to leave it as blank as possible so that when you pick up your paintbrush, aka when you work with the medicine, you can make the most accurate picture without anything already being on there that you have to work around, Yep. And I love what you said about TV, because literally think about it. Television, right? You don't want any other visions being told to you before you go on your own vision quest, right? Yep. And that's something that I love. And I've definitely experienced a little bit of the same thing, where when I went to Mexico to do peyote, it was really just hey, the day of, don't do certain things, abstain from cannabis for a week before, and pretty much you're good. And then some of the ones run by more American.
That is one thing. I do cut out any other psychoactive drugs. The month beforehand, because that can interact with the medicine.
Yeah. I've one of the things that I've found with a lot of these medicines, and I think you already spoke to this, is that there's a lot of misinformation right now, right? Because in the 60s, 70s, there wasn't the internet, right? At least not the way we know it now. I mean, there was one computer that had it or something, but not the internet of today. World Star Hip Hop was not around.
Figuring out how to invent it.
Yeah. And so for instance, with medicines such as combo and 5-MeO, right? Frogs and toads apparently do not get along very well. I heard experiences from certain people who have had some really challenging experiences. Now, apparently, the way that I've been told it, and this is just to go on the misinformation thing, was that if you do combo first and then you do 5-MeO, you should be fine. But if you do 5-MeO and then you do combo, there can be quote unquote violent reactions. However, I recently heard of someone who we both know, who has a very successful podcast, and he did combo 2 days before doing 5-MeO and like straight up lost his mind for 17 days and thought he wasn't going to come back. And so, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And, this is really just for the listeners to understand, like, do your research before you start messing with medicines, especially medicines that can have interactions with one another. And again, there's really not a lot of information out about that, especially when it comes to like 5-MeO, because that's such a deep journey.
Everybody's different too.
Yeah, physiology.
What may be great for one person may be losing your mind for 17 days to somebody else.
Yeah.
'Cause I've done combo the morning of ayahuasca before.
Yeah,
and I thought it was great. But again, here's one rule I like to use is if you're doing something new, do it by itself.
Yes. Agreed.
Combining, if you're gonna do combo and 5-MeO, do a lot of combo.
Yeah.
Get a dozen ceremonies under your belt. Get a dozen 5-MeO ceremonies under your belt, and then combine the two.
Yep.
But they'll make it your first, second, or third experience with some type of combination.
Yeah.
You'll know when you play it around enough with certain things and you built a relationship with these medicines. You should be able to know at some point in your own body, you go, oh, I think this will be good together.
Mm-hmm.
And any time that I've mixed two things together that I didn't like, it's because I was more of like, oh, I'm curious. Yeah, let's just do it. And then I'm like, afterwards I go, I didn't actually tune in. I simply got a little cavalier and shooting from the hip about what I was up to.
Living in the moment,
Because I'm so badass.
Yeah.
I could handle anything. I could handle it, but I didn't want to have to handle it. So
yeah. It's funny. And, in my experience, doing combo and 5-MeO was fine. I did 3 days of combo before to really clear myself out, and then did 5, and I had a beautiful experience. And so that was like one of those moments where I was like, oh, very interesting that once again, physiology, and I imagine a lot of different other things played into that set and setting. Also, when I did 5, it was a synthetic versus the full spectrum, original, bufo venom, and not venom, secretion. And so there's so many different things out there. And, I've found that with regards to what you were just talking about, that seems to happen a lot at music festivals. That's where I see people like just going all out, and like for those listening, I'm not saying you can't have fun with psychedelics at music festivals. I'm actually saying the complete opposite. I'm just saying that, when you're around environments where you're very stimulated, you're more likely to make rash decisions, especially when you're already on some type of substance. And so, be weary.
I'm having flashback memories right now. I'm like,
man.
Oops.
And, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just going to ask you, We've talked a lot about, the experiences you've had that have been very transformational. But for every psychedelic user, there's that one experience, or maybe a couple, that were like, oh, yikes, And so I'd love to jump into that. And maybe even if it wasn't to do with you, something you've seen, I really want to give people some context of, scenarios set in settings where they should be wary. They should take a little bit more caution and really tune in and check in to make sure that things are right before they go down that rabbit hole.
Cool. March 2018. I'm in Costa Rica. And this was the second month of my 6-month sabbatical from work. And I didn't know I was coming back. I didn't know I was going to work again. I was willing to never work again. I was so fed up with myself in the position of running a business and businesses that I said, you know what, maybe I should just stop doing all this, because I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Most entrepreneurs who try to expand their business as much as I was experienced this at some point. So I had my eye on the target of $100 million. So I definitely hit the wall, burnout, all that stuff, taking time off. And during that time, I was meeting a lot of psychonauts. And for a lot of people, when they talk to me, they go, "Oh, Mike, you're a psychonaut." And I go, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. There's another level.
Yeah.
There's another level.
There's levels
And
to this.
and if I list up, I was like, oh yeah, I've done hundreds of journeys and 15 ayahuasca and over I don't know how many DMT. And it's like, wow, you sound like a psychonaut. I'm like, compared to the average person, for sure. But there are people that take this way further. So I end up hanging out with some of these way further, the next level people. And I go, oh yeah, I can hang with them. Like, I've yet to meet anybody. Like, up until this point, I was like, there's nobody. Like, I'm the guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ego.
Yep.
So,
Been there.
and even during that week, I was having to school some of these guys on responsible use. There's a little back and forth, a little challenge going on, but most psychonauts, I can kick their ass, so it works out. So I'm down in Costa Rica. I'm at Envision Festival, and I had been doing a little bit of LSD that week, and it was Friday night of the festival, and I'd been hanging out with these guys, and they had some synthetic drugs that this guy he makes them because most like normal psychedelics aren't powerful enough for him, and he's a genius, so he makes these synthetic things. So I had heard that this guy has them, and my other friend says, don't do that. Don't do that one medicine because it's rough. I go, all right, well, I won't. And then I'm on an LSD journey all day, and I'm out having a good time. And around midnight that night, I'd been out dancing, and I come back to our little camp area, and I run into the guy that has the stuff. And by the way, I'd had a little tiff with him that week. And we made up. We're like, oh, okay, cool. And he goes, you want to try this? And I go, what's it like? What's the experience like? And he goes, it's like ketamine plus fabric softener. And I go, this is what's so funny is I to myself go, that doesn't sound enjoyable. I'm already on acid. And then, but there was the ego came up and was like, this guy, no big deal. Like, I'll give it a shot. Then he asked me, he goes, do you want to be social, or do you want to have a transcendental experience?
At midnight.
At midnight. and I'm already on another experience. What do you think I said?
Transcendental. Of course.
Transcendental.
Yeah, of course.
The ego wanted transcendental.
Yep. The ego will win.
So I open my mouth. He drops it in my mouth. And then he goes, oh, by the way, after I take it, he goes, oh, by the way, lesson number 1, ask more questions. Or lesson number 1, don't let your ego choose. Lesson number 2, ask more questions before you actually take it. He goes, by the way, you may lose use of your body, and you're going to probably have to learn how to use your body again. And I was like, as somebody who wants to be able to have great use of their body, that's bad news.
Yeah.
And I go, huh. He goes, you should be fine though. All right. So my ex-wife was with me. She did it as well. She had the same exact experience. Her mistake that she made was just doing whatever I was doing.
Yep.
So I remember I'm hanging out with this group in our camp, and I'm just bouncing around, and all of a sudden I start feeling really funny, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, 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 and I'm losing use of my body, and I'm like dancing to the music, but then I'm like, I start dissociating from myself completely, and which there's a time and place for that. Festival is not a time to do 100% dissociation.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I can't stand anymore. And I lay down, and I don't get up from that spot for 4 hours. And luckily enough, there were several friends around me that basically were my babysitter for me and my ex. And the experience that I had during that time was being an asteroid in space for what was 1,000 years.
Goodness.
I was completely alone and cold in darkness for what was like 1,000 years, and nothingness. There were no lessons, no great learnings. And my ex at the time grabs me and is like, Mike, we need to go to bed. It's 4 a.m. It's 4 hours later, and I am totally out of it. And I was like, I can't get up. She's like, you need to get up. We've been laying here for hours. I was like, look, you clear the path to my tent, and I think I could get there. She said, okay. She cleared a path. I got up and I stumbled and I just fell into my tent, closed my eyes. And around 9 a.m., I wake up, come to. I don't know if waking up is the right way to put it. I come to because the sun is beating down on my tent and it's fucking 90 degrees, 100% humidity, and I just can't sleep. Get up around 9 a.m. At 2 p.m., I have a talk. I have to be on stage giving a talk about being strong is the name of my topic.
Oh, man, that's great.
So I go, okay. So I got to get, I'm not in my body. I'm still in this experience. I am not in my body. I do hape. I do a cold plunge. I'm doing breath work. I do sananga. If anyone is wondering what any of these things are, these things tend to ground you.
Yeah, they bring you back. They're like the CBD to the THC,
Yeah, and none of them are, some of those are not enjoyable, especially in the state I was in.
Yeah, Sananga. Ugh.
And I'm walking around. I run into the guy that gave me this stuff. He felt bad. At least he appeared like he felt bad.
Yeah.
By the way, the same guy did the same thing to one of my best friends a year later. She's telling me about it. I go, you're describing the identical experience. So when I run across this guy next time, I'm gonna put my hands on him.
Yeah.
I'll hit him. That he can feel like it's like you can't do this to people anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's irresponsible.
Absolutely.
And I trusted him. And that's what, you gotta, shit happens. But I went and talked to the person that was organizing the talks, and I go to her and I go, look, I don't think I'm gonna be able to give the talk. I'm not even in my body right now. And she goes, oh, okay, well, I'll cover for you if you can't make it. And I go, look, she's like, why don't you come 20 minutes beforehand and you tell me whether you can do it or not? I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm not. So I go for a walk on the beach. I go swimming. Like, I'm just trying to get my head screwed on straight. And then 20 minutes before the talk, I'm walking up to her to tell her that I can't do it. And then right before I'm talking to her, I'm like, you're giving a talk on being strong. Why don't you be strong and just do it? And I said, you know what? I'm going to do the talk. I get up, I give the talk, crushed it for like 40 minutes. I had people who were fans of my show, Barbell Shrug, that showed up to the talk that happened to be at the festival, which blew my mind. And I crushed it. Like a 30-second point clip of that video went viral on Facebook, in fact. And the running joke is I wasn't even in my body for that talk, and it fucking went viral. So later that night, I still not in my body. And I go, look, the only thing I can think of that's going to help me out is a hippie flip.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my sayings is sometimes the solution to taking too many drugs is to do more drugs.
Yeah.
And I had some MDMA and some psilocybin mushrooms, and I did them, and I ended up having one of the best nights of my life. And it brought me, it balanced me back. Believe it or not, that's what balanced me back.
Yeah. And
went on about my merry way, learned a lesson, and I'll never forget, being a meteor for 1,000 years. It was dark and lonely. I was transformed, but not in, I wouldn't say it was like, it just kind of like, it messed me up for a good month.
Yeah, it jarred you.
It jarred me.
Yeah.
It jarred me.
Yeah.
But I, like you were saying, I think we've all had that experience.
Yeah.
And the lesson may not be like, oh, this changed my life in this way. Now the lesson is just, practice more discernment.
Yeah.
About when, where, who, all these things. And going back to the results conversation with the last show, is if I had listened to my friend who had shared with me the result he had gotten by taking that guy's stuff previously, I wouldn't have ended up there. I should have listened to him.
Yeah.
I could have listened to him.
Yeah.
And now I do.
I love that you brought that up because, this brings up a really good conversation on, or a topic, with regards to the psychedelic conversation of, one of the trends I've seen beginning, that makes me a little nervous is the typical archetype of the person who tries psychedelics, goes to something like Burning Man and decides they're now a shaman, and for those listening who are wanting to find a guide to help them through their experience, what are some key things to look for in a guide to ensure they're experienced enough to protect them? Like in your case, like this guy, right? Like I imagine there were probably some red flags. Number one, your friend saying like, hey, don't do that. What are some red flags people should look for? And also good flags, whatever the opposite of red is.
They can make you feel safe at any moment. Safety is their number one. Physical, psycho-emotional, spiritual safety. If you can't spend time with that person in the same room for hours on end and leave the room feeling safe the whole time, whatever that lack of safety that you're experiencing is going to be amplified during an experience. Mm-hmm. So safety is number one. I like to know, what their everyday life is like. Do they have their shit put together? I meet a lot of people who are creating experiences for people, but they're not very grounded themselves. And it's like, okay, let's get you grounded. But like, I think a lot of those people who aren't grounded are actually really good facilitators. But for me, I want to go see a facilitator who has figured out the grounding piece. I've grounded myself in. All right, now like I'm safe. All right, you can ground me if things get too high. You can ground me. Like one of the guy we know, he's so good at grounding people. It's crazy. He just puts his hand on you, all of a sudden it's like, whoom.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, if you're looking for like a crazy adventure, you might want someone who's a little bit more airy,
Yeah.
But depends.
Yeah.
Those are in their experience. I've sat with ayahuasqueros that have over 60 years of experience, and I've sat with ayahuasqueros who had 10 years experience. There was a difference. Mm-hmm. So I really like to sit with people who have a lot of experience, who have not just with themselves, but with other people, all that kind of stuff. For me, like the longer I do any of this stuff, the more cautious I become, the more conservative I become. Like I have no interest in facilitating for other people. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of experience myself. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of like doing stuff with people who are like almost like reluctant guides. It's like, the medicine told me to do this. I'm not really like, I go, okay, you're really being guided here. Whereas like the person who's like, let's do all this stuff. I'm like,
don't worry, I'll protect you. It's
uh-oh.
Yeah.
It really is a feeling, it's hard to say. Like, there are things I look for. I look for experience. Do I experience in them as someone who's grounded? Do I feel safe with them? Do I feel as though other people would be safe with them?
Yeah.
Because, I can be a little, some say I have a high risk tolerance.
Likewise.
So, would I trust my girlfriend to go do something with these people? Mm-hmm. Oh, if I would trust, okay, then I know that I can guarantee myself to have a good experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, man. And I feel like that's a topic that I don't see being discussed enough, especially in the realms of psychedelic medicine and the mainstream. Of course, in the circles that we frequent, people are extremely aware of these things. They're doing the quote unquote work, and they're very open to a lot of things. And so, these conversations we have a lot. But I feel as though for people that are just starting out, these are the things they should be excited to think about, and get clear. And so, to wrap this up, there's a ton of amazing research coming out from places such as Johns Hopkins and Stanford on psychedelics as medicine, confirming scientifically what many psychonauts, including both you and I, have experienced all along. Where do you see the future of psychedelics heading in 2021 and beyond?
I see like the synthetics, or entheogens, what do you want to call them? MDMA, ketamine, clinics popping up, a lot more psychotherapists who are getting certified and working with facilities to make that happen. I think that's going to happen. I'm watching that happen. My girlfriend's a psychotherapist in the field, and is, interacting with maps and all that stuff. So like I'm getting that part I'm not as personally interested in.
Yeah.
I think it's actually kind of hilarious that people are waiting for permission to take responsibility of their own consciousness. But
agreed.
Like if you're waiting for permission to handle your own consciousness, you need more.
They haven't worked yet,
You haven't done the work yet. Yeah. You know more psychedelics.
Yeah.
So, I think it looks like things are being legalized and it's going to be standardized. I do have concerns. I have concerns that it's funny because when things are legalized or are sold or prescribed, people. The same people who were afraid to use these things now just unconsciously are willing to use them because, it must be safe. The doctor told me I can.
A guy in a white lab coat told me. Must be good.
Yeah. So it's, I think there's some concerns to be had there. I think that there's going to be some, there may be some mishaps in the future due to that standardization. And there being this authority conversation outside of an individual in regard to whether, permission and all that. And I see what I'm witnessing as well, which I was unsure of in the beginning, is I'm seeing some medicine being served inside the United States being done really well. So I've always been a fan of going south myself, and I've had some ceremonies U.S. side that I wasn't as impressed with. But I'm starting to have the experience in the U.S. where I go, oh, this is actually like, our elders are getting there. Right?
They're becoming wise.
They're becoming. We have wise elders that are developing, and so just what I'm watching culturally, I think we're seeing a big division in people who are taking responsibility for themselves, and it's a very small percentage. But the tools that are afforded to us are very powerful. So I think that the medicine is not for everybody, and for those of us that the medicine is for, we're here to be the guides. For those who are not on medicine, we get to share the wisdom that's passed down from generation to generation. Not about the medicine, not about the psychedelic medicine, but the medicine of our humanity.
Absolutely.
And so I really see it as, I keep getting called back to ayahuasca. I keep going south for ayahuasca. Why do I keep getting called for this? Because it's not always, unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah.
And every time I come back, I have messages that resonate with people. I've sat in sessions where I'm helping people, where I'm coaching them, and people are witness of me coaching, and they go, where the hell did you learn that? Like my girlfriend, she's a trained psychotherapist. She goes, where did you get your training? The jungle.
Yeah.
Like where did you learn that? What book did you read? I was like, I did. It was ayahuasca.
Yeah. Nature.
Yeah.
Naturing.
I've learned how to be in touch with reality and experience it and receive the messages that way. And, a lot of times I say that and people think I'm full of shit. And, or they're like, well, you sound kind of like Nietzsche when he said this. I'm like, yeah, I really haven't read much Nietzsche, but,
And it makes sense because the morphic resonance field, right? We're all pulling from the same collective unconscious. And so it makes sense that ideas and, different things are going to be similar from person to person.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. So, I think that for a lot of us, we have our work cut out for us, and learning how to communicate effectively the wisdom that we've received. And that's going to take, a mix of going deep with medicine and a mix of getting in touch with how the mainstream person receives information.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. And, it's been interesting because for me, I was in the cannabis industry for some years, and I watched cannabis get legalized, and I watched like a bunch of Chad and Brad suit and ties just take over the industry. And so that's my number one fear with this, because we are dealing with plant medicines that are conscious, right? And people are wondering why rates of anxiety and paranoia are at an all-time high with cannabis, right? And instead of, actually looking into their own lives, they're gaslighting and just saying, oh, cannabis just must give me anxiety. It's like, no, it's not cannabis in most cases. It's either you not doing the work, or it's the people growing the plant making $9 an hour that don't care about the plant whatsoever. It's the energy that's put into it by putting shitty chemical salt nutrients into the plant. I mean, there's all these different factors. And so that's the number one thing that has concerned me with the legalization movement. But everything else, I'm very optimistic about the future on. And so I love getting your point of view on that.
Yeah. Anytime there's a standard, there's a bunch of suit and ties that are going to come in and pump out as much volume as they can at the minimum standard.
Yeah. It's like when your parents used to come in when you were hanging out with friends. They'd be like, "What's up, cool kids? How you doing?" You'd be like, "Oh my God, Dad, stop." That's like what it feels like. That's what it felt like constantly in the cannabis industry. I was like, you guys are making me embarrassed for you. Like, it's just like, please just go do your bookkeeping stuff and stay in that room. All right. Like, we don't want your juju in here,
Yeah.
Mike, this has been so much fun, man. It's been a great ride getting to explore the top of psychedelics, your experiences with them, and the wisdom you've gained from them. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more from you?
Check me out, Mike_Bledsoe on Instagram. Just quote me there. I got the company I run is called The Strong Coach. If you're a coach, we have a psychedelic friendly coaching community.
I can attest to that.
He can attest to that. Yeah. So we actually have one student going through right now. He just finished a 9-month psychospiritual training specifically for prep integration, working with medicine. Now he's going through the Strong Coach to build his business. So
that's beautiful.
He was the first guy to come through that was his 100% focus. And pleased that he's getting good results there.
That's cool.
And I like having him in the community. I'm like, oh, we got the weirdo on the call.
Yeah, right.
I got a CrossFit coach over here and medicine man over here. It's perfect.
That's awesome, man. I'll have to ask you his name, because I'm genuinely interested in all the different trainings out there and looking into which one is going to work best for me, because I'm just ultra curious about this stuff. And, I'd love to expand on the training I've already done and learn from some new people,
Yeah, I'm not remembering who we trained with before, but I have a connect. I can find out.
All right, cool. Perfect, man. And I got one last question for you, Mike, if you're up for it. All right. So if someone listening was just swayed by you to experience psychedelic medicines for the first time, what piece of advice would you offer them to give them the best opportunity to have the smoothest experience possible?
Start slow. And you can't take less later. You can always take more for one. And find people who have experience doing it. Don't do it in a party environment. Be in a place where you can experience it with low stimulation, and where you can feel safe away from a lot of people, because the more different energy you're having to deal with, the harder it is to keep feeling safe. Do it with people who have experience and you feel safe with. and start with, medicines that tend to guarantee a good time, like an MDMA is my favorite first, psilocybin be my favorite second. San Pedro is a nice second or third as well. And then ease your way into something like ayahuasca or 5-MeO-DMT. So most people don't need those medicines. They can do the easier stuff.
Yeah. I love that, man. And I'm always famous for saying, like, when people ask about MDMA, I'm like, listen, man, MDMA is like the medicine you could go to a funeral and have the best time ever. It's almost impossible to have a bad time so long as you get the right thing and you're just in a good frame of mind.
Great source.
Yes.
Guaranteed sourcing, and there's testing kits you can get online. Do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, after hearing Mike some years ago on Barbell Shrugged and Paul Chek's podcast, Living 4D, it was immediately apparent to me just how well-versed and experienced Mike was with not just plant medicines, but the integration work that went along with them. Knowing firsthand just how important integration was, I was immediately excited to meet him in person and had the opportunity to do so at a men's retreat last August. Mike truly walks the walk and has been a big inspiration in my evolution of responsible plant medicine use and countless others through his mindset work, his life experiences, and the authenticity he puts forth in his message. Make sure you give him a follow and keep up to date on all the concepts he is speaking about, as they all have a very important interplay into the world of psychedelic medicine experiences and their ability to integrate and create positive change in our daily lives. Mike, thank you so much again for sharing your time with us today, and until next time, brother, be well. Aho.
Thanks, brother. Love you.
Love you too.